everyone, it's Michelle Upton here, and I just wanted to share with you how I made a couple of cards using the inlaid die cut technique. Now, I posted a little snippet of a card on Instagram last week, and I had a few requests to ask how I'd actually made it. So I thought I'd make one very, very similar today and show you. So what you can see here, I've done something actually a little bit different to last time. Last time I just made a yupo panel with a rainbow of alcohol inks. This time I decided to emboss my yupo panel with the die first, and the die that I'm using is from Paper Rose, which is an Australian company. I thought I'd emboss it first and see if the alcohol ink would stay in sort of little puddles in each of the little areas that I'd embossed. Now, as you can see, that didn't happen. So, I'm just making a background and using the outlines of the die to allow me to kind of colour in the image, not exactly, but kind of colour it in. So I'm trying to make the centre of the large flower in this sort of intense orange colour, then the petals of the large flower in the yellows, and then some of the foliage green, and then a little bit of blue in the background, a little bit of aqua blue. So this card, it is a very, very, how should I put it, intense card to make, because this particular die that I'm using is so detailed, and there are so many little bits, and so many little bits that have the potential to get lost. So when I made the rainbow one that I posted on Instagram, one of the pieces actually got lost for about 5 minutes, and I looked everywhere, and I just turned my desk area and the carpet, and I'm just looking everywhere, and eventually I actually put my face in my hand because I was almost in tears. I was so upset that I'd lost this teeny tiny piece of this die cut. Anyway, when I pulled my hand down from my face, this teeny tiny little bit of yupo fell onto the desk. It was stuck on my face the whole time. So I was kind of glad that I'd found it, but yeah, I'm honestly, I think I must be crazy trying to do this again so soon. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking a piece of white cardstock. This cardstock that I'm using is from Catherine Pooler. I really like it, and it's good for die cutting because it's not the heavy weight cardstock that I prefer to use for a card base. It's still heavy enough weight for lots of things, just not as heavy as some of the other cardstocks I sometimes use. You can see now how many little pieces there are in this die, but it's an absolutely gorgeous design, really. I just love it. So I'm just putting it here just to make sure that I've got the colours vaguely where I wanted it. And you can see the oranges and yellows are within the large flower and all the rest are sort of surrounding it. Now I'm going to adhere this die, the white die, to a card front. Now the die, I believe it's been sized so it will fit on an Australian A6 card front. But because the card stock that I'm using is from Catherine Pooler, it's American letter sized. So that means I cut it down. I generally cut down my cards to 5.5 by 4 1/8. So I had to cut it down a little bit narrower just to fit the dimensions. Now, you might see when I'm sticking this down, can you see the sort of flower right there that I just grabbed in the top right hand corner? I found the first time I did this inlaid die cut technique, that bit was really problematic to actually stick down. It was a pain in the neck. So I've left it unstuck for the time being, and I'll stick it down when I actually put the inlaid pieces in, because then it'll line up a lot more neatly. So there are lots of ways of doing this inlaid die cut technique, and I know Jennifer Maguire uses a sort of stick it adhesive on the back, but some of these pieces are so small and some of them are quite large, but there are so many pieces and very unusually shaped pieces that I just thought stick it would be a bit difficult. So I'm just using liquid glue. So I'm using Gina K Connect glue. Now, right now, I'm actually getting the teeny tiny piece that got stuck to my face. And the last time I did this technique, I thought I'm going to get this one out of the way early on so I don't have to think about it. Then, of course, another piece went missing, but the other piece it's really not obvious. If you didn't know that it was missing, you probably wouldn't even notice that it was missing. But anyway, so I'm just doing right now is one of the major problems I came across with this card. When I die cut the yupo, pulling it out of the die, it actually delaminated. So basically I got little thin layers of the plastic that the yupo is made of ripping off the surface of the yupo. And it was just a pain in the neck. So I had to actually cut off little bits using my fine scissors. And this happened lots of times. So I don't know that this is going to be a technique that I do very, very often. Also seeing as you can actually get a very similar look to this by just having a yupo background on flat yupo and putting a white die cut over the top of it. I think I'll be doing that more often than I do this technique, also because this takes so long. Now you can see how I've lifted up that little branching sort of berry things, and I'm sticking the coloured piece around it and then pushing the white bit down because it fits nicely. And by the magic of YouTube, I'm now finished. This process took me, well, from start to finish, the 2 cards that I've made took about an hour and a quarter. So the vast majority of that time was this process that I just cut out of the video. So aren't you lucky? Yay! So now I'm taking the die cut, the actual positive space of the die cut out. I'm going to put this onto another card, but what you'll notice is when I pull it out, there's a whole lot of alcohol ink on the actual die because I obviously didn't leave it long enough for that alcohol ink to dry. It looks fine on the actual yupo piece, but I did have to clean my die a bit later on. I just used some rubbing alcohol with a rag and it came off really, really easily. It was not a problem at all. But yeah, just don't do what I did. I would, if in future, I would actually make the panel of yupo in advance and maybe leave it dry overnight. But I often do that. I actually have heaps of pieces of yupo that I have put alcohol inks on, and they're just sitting on the side of my desk so that if I want to make a quick card with an alcohol ink background, they're all ready to go, just like that. And see, that one was so much easier, and just stick it on the front and it was all done. So the 90% of the time taken to make these cards was the card on the right. And most of the problems that I encountered came from the card on the right. So I decided to keep the rest of these 2 cards pretty simple. So I pulled out a couple of dies. The Happy is from Simon Says Stamp, and the Friend is from Studio Katia. And I just die cut them from black cardstock. And then I pulled out a couple of stamp sets, one from Birch Press that I'm using quite a lot with this Happy die cut because it's got one particular stamp that says birthday to you. So when I've got Happy stamp, I pull out this particular stamp. heaps and heaps and heaps. It's really good. It's one of the most used purchases that I've made in the last year or so. Now the other little mini stamp that I'm just stamping now is from a stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. Another one that I'm pulling out heaps and heaps. I love using these little sentiments to pair up with dies. So when I was adhering this one, I decided to sort of weave the sentiment in underneath the Y, the loop of the Y of the happy, just to add a little bit more interest. And once I'd adhered that, sorry it's a little bit off the bottom, but once I adhere that card's pretty much done. And with the other card, a similar thing. I just adhered the friend die and then adhered the happy birthday sentiment directly underneath that. Now, the interesting thing about the friend die is it's got a teeny tiny little dot on top of the I, so you have to get that out of the die. So it's useful to just line it up with the rest of the die that you've already adhered, and then you can get it out properly. Okay, so that's the two cards. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.